Once bold Governor DeWine becomes cautious. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Dale Butland, Democratic strategist, Terry Casey, Republican strategist, and Jesse Balmert, State House reporter for the Cincinnati Enquirer. Early in the pandemic, Governor DeWine was among the boldest chief executives in the country. He was among the first governors to shut down a big event, the Arnold, way back in March. He closed bars and restaurants days before St. Patrick's Day. Then he closed schools, then everything that was essential. For a brief time, for 12 hours, he even mandated masks. But now, as COVID cases increase here in Ohio and around the country, the governor is being much more cautious when it comes to state mandates. Many thought he would use a special address this week to mandate masks statewide or close some public spaces, but he left that for another time, all while issuing dire warnings.
We must act, and we must act now. My friends, this is not a drill. This certainly is not any hoax. This is not a dress rehearsal. It's the real thing. The enemy is here, and Ohioans have simply come too far in this fight to cede ground now.
That's the closest, I guess, the governor has come to criticizing Donald Trump during all this. Anyway, Jesse Balmert, this was a 5:30 p.m. address, early evening, which is kind of pandemic prime time for web viewing. It was after he canceled his regular briefing on Tuesday. My guess is most people thought he was going to announce something big at that speech he gave.
I think your guess is right. I think there was a lot of buildup from canceling the press conference to having this address at 5:30, a time when more people might be off work or, done with their regular events. Not as many people are making that 2 p.m. Press conference appointment as they used to. So there was a lot of buildup to it. And ultimately what he was doing was giving people a very strong warning and talking to and suggesting that if people don't take this seriously, there will be more hospitalizations and more deaths from this disease.
Terry Casey, the governor of Alabama and Walmart are farther out front than Governor DeWine is with regards to wearing masks. Why is he being so cautious and not mandating masks statewide?
Well, I think the reality is the governor understands you've got to change public attitudes. And there's a lot of parts of Ohio, particularly in the urban areas, that I think get it a little bit better, but he's got limited tools, and part of it's persuasion and education. And I think this is a lot like what happened in Ohio on the smoking ban on seatbelts. If you try and preach and order people too much, sometimes they resist. So you've got to bring them along, educate them. And I think we're making a lot of progress, but we've still got a ways to go. And also people forget the state of Ohio has been, for the past few weeks, spending about $4 million on ads from the Bureau of Workers' Comp and the Health Department trying to push wearing masks. So I think we're making progress, but he recognizes you've got to lead people to water to get them to do the right thing. You can't always force them, or you can't hire a mask police to be in every bar and every store in Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, Dale, of course, time is of the essence, where it may not have been as of the essence with the seatbelt and the smoking ban. I mean, the cases are spreading now. Early on, you were very complimentary to how Governor DeWine was handling this. I'm guessing your attitude has changed a little bit.
Yeah, look, Mike, as you know, I have never hesitated to praise Governor DeWine on this show for his leadership and the way he's handled this crisis. But after watching him on TV this week, I'm afraid he's now caving in to the give me liberty or give me COVID crowd. With Ohio virus cases doubling in just the past 3 weeks and alarming spikes in positivity rates, hospitalizations, and deaths, it is inexplicable why Governor DeWine would still refuse to make mask wearing mandatory, which was a step that was taken this week by even the governors of Arkansas and Alabama.
Jesse, when it comes to, now, for all intents and purposes, much of the state is mandated to wear masks, 60% of the state's population, because if you look at the map of all the states, and of course, if you at that level 3 map, the red area where 19 counties are now at the level 3, which is very high exposure to COVID. Of course, Franklin County and many of the counties around it, almost all the counties around it, are red. Those areas, those red counties, masks are mandated. So in essence, most people already are ordered to wear a mask. Jesse.
Correct. There are 19 counties that are now required to wear masks, and the way that they're doing that is this new color-coded map, and they're looking at different things. So cases per capita, the rise in new cases, ICU bed capacity in the area. So in places like Hamilton County, it's over 80% capacity. Now, not all of those people are COVID patients, but you obviously have to have room for other patients in the hospitals as well. So you're trying to look at a bunch of different factors and try to get some buy-in and some support from not just the regular people sitting at home to wear a mask and to not have huge gatherings of people outside their family, but you're also trying to get a buy-in from local politicians and health departments and people who are going to be enforcing these orders. Because if you don't have much enforcement, do you really have an order?
Yeah. Dale, how can you enforce this, Dale Butler? I mean, you're not going to have police officers standing on the street corner issuing tickets. I mean, how do you enforce this, and what's the real point of the order if it's really hard to enforce?
Well, look, I think that, well, there's lots of ways you can enforce it. Other states are doing that. I don't think you want to throw people in jail necessarily, but there are fines. And I think that fines are appropriate. But I would also say, in fairness, the problem really we have in this state, in this country, goes far beyond Governor DeWine or any other particular governor, because we are in the middle of a national crisis. We have COVID cases exploding across the country. Our nation's on track now for 300,000 deaths by the end of this year. So it should be clear by now that 50 different plans in 50 different states by 50 different governors just isn't going to cut it. A national crisis requires a national response. But the problem is President Trump has never had a coherent plan to deal with this virus, and he still doesn't.
Terry Casey, is the next step shutting down bars and restaurants? If we saw at the end of this week, nearly 1,700 cases on Friday, we're well over 1,000 cases a day, double what it was just about a month ago as far as the daily case rate. Not all of those can be explained away by increased testing. Will the governor have to shut down bars? Will he have to go further than masks? And how tough is it going to be for him to do that? Terry Casey.
Well, one of the things this week that might have been missed is they're having the Liquor Control Commission and their agents target certain areas. Example, Athens County, where there's been a big spike up, and we know Ohio University has its well-earned reputation for bars, but having the liquor control agents target certain bars, because if the bar owners, or if it happens to be restaurants, if they realize they got a problem and there might be consequences like losing their liquor license, they're going to behave a lot better and make sure their customers behave or else. So I think there's some targeted things that are already in the works, and obviously they can do more of that because that's one of the tools the governor has.
Jesse Balmer, who's advising the governor now? Amy Acton was with him, right next to him on all of his briefings for the first 3 months of this. She's in a different position, a health advisor, no longer the director of public health. The director of public health is an attorney. He's interim director. Do we know who's advising him on the health and science at this point? Jesse Balmer?
Well, the governor says that he's still speaking regularly with Dr. Acton, but I think there's a variety of professionals that he's consulting with regularly, and that's something that was happening even before the transition from Acton to Lance Himes as the director of the Department of Health. And as you pointed out, he's not a doctor. So, for example, on Thursday's press conference, they had a doctor from Ohio State's Wexner Medical Center come in and really explain the differences between the different metrics and the colors and the things that are going on. So he is consulting with doctors, but you are missing that presence of a medical professional on his regular talks, I think.
Yeah, and also missing from those talks is the reporter's ability to question the medical professional who's there to see if that medical professional, the doctor from OSU or Dr. Acton, agrees with the lack of a mandate or the lack of a closure of facilities That's what's happening in the briefings. Terry Casey, back to you. The mask decision is purely political. That's wearing a mask is not going to hurt the economy. It's not going to shut down businesses. In fact, it may keep businesses open. That was a political decision. The governor's approval rating is at 70%. What is he afraid of by ordering masks? He wants people to wear masks. There's no doubt about it. He wants them to wear masks, but he's not willing to order it, and that's obviously a political decision. Why the reluctance? Terry.
Well, I'm not sure it's totally political. Part of it's also a practical message, because in some parts of the state, we forget there's a lot of rural areas in Ohio. If you're working on a farm, you're working in some other places where you're maintaining major distance, you've got a lot of good air circulation, it's not quite as needed. So
but the mask mandate wouldn't apply to those. They wouldn't apply to those cases. I don't wear a mask in my office when I'm all by myself. It's just out in public. If you're in your tractor, you wouldn't wear a mask.
Well, but it depends what you're doing and where you're doing it and whether you're maintaining distance, because over time, there's kind of been a message, either wear a mask or maintain distance. Obviously, if you're in a targeted audience with more risk, doing both is even better. So part of it's that difference of where you at. And again, when you look at that map of Ohio, people in rural areas feel, rightly or wrongly, they're not as much risk if they were in a metropolitan area or near a metropolitan area.
So Terry, he's not worried about a primary challenge from Larry Householder or Jim Renacci or somebody like that? I mean, is that not in the back of his mind?
I don't think it's as political as you think. It's just practical. The more you can persuade people and get them to think and realize it's their idea and their interest to maintain their safety, the better off you're going to be.
Dale, you agree?
Well, look, at a time when polls show, and there are two new ones out this week that are showing 70% of the American people are saying that the country is on the wrong track. That's true in Ohio too. So it can't be just the Democrats demanding change. It's time for Republicans to stand up to this president and to say, no more indoor rallies, no more attacks on Dr. Fauci, no more bullying of parents and schools who want to make sure kids and teachers are safe before they reopen. And above all, and this particularly applies to the state of Ohio, no more kowtowing to those who preposterously equate having to wear a mask with living in a dictatorship. The Constitution is not a suicide pact, and it's time someone in Terry's party had the guts to say so.
Jesse, real quick, testing is becoming an issue again. Many more people can get tests. The problem is now they're having to wait a long time to get the results. I know people who are having to wait 5 to 7 days to get a test because they think they may have been exposed. Meanwhile, they're out, certainly at least mingling with their family before they know what's going on.
Yeah, testing has been a problem from the very beginning. Accessing tests was a problem. Initially, Ohio was sent tests that didn't work from the CDC, so we were one of the last states to start testing. Then there were problems getting everything you needed to do tests. We've really ramped up the amount of testing, but Governor DeWine wanted to have us at 22,000 tests a day by the end of May. We're just now hitting that a month and a half, nearly 2 months later. So it's been an issue all along. And obviously, to your point, someone getting it 5 to 7 days later is a problem because you've interacted with more people, you've potentially gone more places. It makes contact tracing, that next step, so much harder to contact people you might have been in contact with. So the more we can do to improve testing, the better off we'll be as a state. And I know that's a priority of our leaders right now, but it really can't get better quickly enough.
All right.
If I can just quickly insert something there on the testing issue. That really demonstrates just where we are and what a weak response. President Trump brags about we're now having 600,000 tests a day in this country. The experts are telling us we need 5 million tests a day. The testing regimen in this country continues to be a national disgrace.
All right, in about a month, tens of thousands of college students will return to their campuses. Things will be different. Plans call for lots of testing. Students won't crowd into large lecture halls. Campuses will mandate masks, but many students, parents, and professors wonder if this will all happen, if it's the right way to go, and then there is the whole issue of whether college football and other sports will take place this fall. Dale Butlin, if when you look at that map and you saw Franklin County and all of its counties red, you saw Athens deep red. Do you think OSU or OU would welcome students back to campus right now if classes began next week?
Yeah, Mike, at a time when these virus cases have reached 75,000 per day and are exploding across 41 states, everyone knows what's behind the decision of many colleges, including Ohio State, to resume in-person classes. And that, of course, is money. Ohio's public colleges have already lost $110 million in state funding. And a lot of private colleges, both here and across the nation, may not survive without students being back on campus. But I think this is an experiment that is destined to fail, mainly because it depends on 18, 19, and 20-year-olds doing things like wearing masks and maintaining social distance that go against every hormonal urge in their young bodies. Things might work out okay for a week or two, but does anyone seriously believe that social distancing is going to survive the first cake party?
Yeah, Terry, I mean, you can't expect 4-year-olds to socially distance. You really can't expect college kids to do the same, right? Terry?
Well, and if you're a college student or a parent paying the bill, what's the value if you're in a college dorm and you've got to wear the mask around when you study, when you're socializing, and most importantly, to get breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you've got to go online to place your order, go down and pick it up. Maybe there'll be space there, maybe there won't. Maybe you go up to your room and heat it in the microwave. I mean, what kind of college experience is that? And then I've heard college students still like to go out and get beers, and we know bars are the worst place in the world to be for spreading the COVID virus. So it's a real questionable sailing in rocky river and rocky waters.
Yeah, although, all those alternatives are probably better than living in your parents' house,
But we're also leaving out the health of professors and the hundreds and thousands of other adults in dining halls, administration buildings, custodial services, many of whom are at ages that put them in the high-risk category.
Jesse Balmer, other states, the professors' unions have come out and said that we don't want to go back. We don't think we feel safe. Any of that happening in Ohio? What's the attitude that you heard about professors and faculty at Ohio colleges?
I know, much like K-12 educators, there's a lot of concerns, there's fears, there's trying to figure out what's going to happen, trying to figure out what plan B and C and D is, because I think there is a real expectation that if there's an outbreak on one of these campuses, or when there's an outbreak on one of these campuses, that they would have to switch to online education. So everyone is trying to make up the rules as they go, which is, we'll see how that works.
Yeah, that's a tremendous burden, Jesse, because college, you always have to plan your syllabus, but now you have to, it's a hybrid. You're in class, but you're not in class, and if we cancel, it's really, I've seen a lot of tweets from professors saying, this is a lot to handle.
And Dale mentioned about a little thing called money. I don't know what's going to happen on Saturday afternoons, but the OSU athletic department is going to lose tens of millions of dollars, because at a minimum, they're maybe only going to have 10,000 fans there, but all that revenue from the tickets and the parking, the concessions, I think for sure is gone. The question is, do they get 10 or 15% of the money, or do they get 0% of the money from those big Saturday afternoons?
Dale, do you think even 10,000 people will be in the shoe?
I was going to say, I find it highly unlikely that college football is going to be played this fall or any other fall sport. I mean, what happens when Ohio State, for example, plays another team, whether at home or away, and a few days after the game, we learned that one or more players on the other team has tested positive for COVID. Does OSU have to quarantine all or most of its players for 14 days? And if so, how will they field a team the following Saturday?
Jesse.
Mm-hmm. And this is Big Ten Power 5 football. You're also talking about the other Ohio colleges in the MAC that rely on student activity fees for a lot of their funding of sports and athletics. So if students aren't on campus, or if they aren't on campus as much, that's going to be devastating for those budgets. Not the top concern of universities right now, but certainly something that they're going to have to figure out.
But Jesse,
And I
state
can't figure
guidelines.
out how they're gonna
Jesse
have a
Ballmer,
team huddle
Jesse Ballmer, real
between-
quickly. Jesse, state guidelines now. There's no restrictions. Contact sports can begin, correct? Like at the high school level and in the college level. Football practice can start when they're supposed to in August, right?
I know that high school sports are planning on that. There was a bit of a gap to allow them to do some contact sports, but I think there are still some limitations on sports generally, but it's something they're going to have to figure out pretty soon because they're starting August 1st.
Yeah, and Terry, sorry to interrupt, but mass gatherings certainly are not allowed, so there won't be a big crowd at the shoe, if any at all.
Well, but again, the revenue impact is going to be massive. And I don't know what they're going to do with the contracts they had to cancel with the Bowling Greens and the Buffaloes, where they were going to pick up about $3 million and they get zero. I mean, it's a tangled fiscal and other kind of mess as far as where we're headed.
All right. Crime in Columbus was on the rise even before the pandemic hit. Back in January and February, the murder rate was higher than normal in the city. Then it fell during the shutdown. Now, halfway through the year, as the city copes with coronavirus and tensions between police and the public have flared, the city has seen a sudden spike in youth violence. 4 teenagers have been murdered in the last 6 weeks in Columbus. Some blame the pandemic for eliminating jobs and youth programs, but others say the problem goes deeper than that.
We know that because of the pandemic, we know that because of economic disparities, we know that because of systematic racism, we know that because of lack of affordable housing, we know that because of neighborhoods, none of us should really be shocked by what we're seeing, because this is a result of those disparities now coming to light.
Terry Casey, crime rates go up and down, and it's really hard sometimes to pinpoint what's causing it. But what do you think is going on here in Columbus?
Well, last weekend we had 10 people shot, 3 people killed. It's almost like Chicago. And when I talked to Ron O'Brien, he said the same thing the new police superintendent did in Chicago. He said it's guns, gangs, and drugs. And it's a very sad situation. From other people, there's also questions whether in the juvenile court they're doing enough to with juveniles who've had violent records and histories. So, and then the other question is, at what point, when the mayor keeps bashing the police and the FOP, how do you get citizens to trust the police and be willing to provide evidence and help them solve crimes and deal with those other issues? So it's a serious issue, but last weekend was a pretty bad one.
Yeah, Dale, there was some speculation, other cities where police have backed off a bit. Perhaps they're less aggressive, perhaps they're angry at the backlash.
Yeah, in fact, I think it's significant that this spike, particularly in youth shootings, gang-related shootings, is not just happening in Columbus, but all over the country. Thursday this week, the New York Times ran a long story about the spike in gang-related shootings this summer in New York City and the corresponding drop in the rate of shooting arrests. Now, in that story, some were blaming the police for intentionally slowing down arrests and investigations to show their displeasure with all the Black Lives Matter and use of force protests. But, you know, the police deny that, but they do admit that morale is low. Some officers may be pulling back on arrests because they aren't sure how aggressive they can be. But whatever is causing this spike, we know that gun violence in particular always seems to go up in the summer, probably in a summer with COVID and kids not being able to go to swimming pools or rec centers and you know, the stress everybody's under. It's probably no surprise that they're up. But whatever is caused it, the one thing that's beyond dispute is that guns are always involved. And with over 300 million guns in circulation in this country, too many of them are ending up in the hands of kids. So we can't do anything about summer until there's a vaccine. We probably can't do much about the virus, but we can do something about guns if only we had the will to do that at both the federal and the state levels.
Jesse, we're coming up on about a year from the anniversary of the Dayton mass shooting, Governor DeWine's gun plan. Nothing has happened on that at the State House. I assume nothing is in the works.
Correct. Yeah, right now the Ohio House of Representatives is on a break. The Senate is meeting once a month, really to tackle some of the big concerns with the coronavirus, which is something that needs legislation. But frequently the topics about guns get put on the back burner until there is a lot of attention on them. And with that, they don't get passed.
All right, it's time now for our weekly off the record parting shots, and we will start with Terry Casey.
Look for the date of August 10th. That's when the next budget numbers need to come out from the state to see how well they did on people sending in their income tax, how sales is going in retail and for cars. But the problem for Ohio is most of the rainy day fund is going to be spent in the next 11 and a half months. And the problem is they got to start preparing in 6 months for the next 2-year budget. So look for a major budget question, and August 10th is going to be a key date to see how we're doing with money coming in for Ohio.
All right, Dale Butlin.
Well, President Trump promised he would put America first. Well, he's made America number one, all right, with more COVID cases, hospitalizations, and deaths than any other nation on the planet Earth, which is why polls show Joe Biden winning by double digits nationally and beating Trump in all the swing states too, including Florida and even Texas. Yes, the election is still more than 3 months away, but unless something changes, Trump's failure to meet the moment may mean not just a blue wave, but a blue tsunami on election day.
And Jesse Balmert, just a few seconds left. Your last thought.
On a slightly sweeter note, Graders is celebrating its 150th anniversary this year, but it might not have made it without one stubborn woman named Regina Graders, who was nicknamed the Boss. So you can get all the details in the Cincinnati Enquirer about that.
Black raspberry. That's my final thought. Black raspberry. Go get it, but wear your mask. That'll do it for this week. Thanks to our panel. Thanks to our crew here. Check us out online, wosu.org. Also, Twitter and Facebook. I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.